OK, now I don't pretend to be an avid football fan, but like millions of people up and down the country, I can't help but get caught up in the euphoria of watching England play, especially Gareth Southgate's talented team that represent the rich, diverse makeup of modern Britain. As I wrote in The Sun earlier this week, it broke my heart to read that England and Spurs defender Danny Rose is counting down the days until his football career is over. And this sad news is not because he no longer enjoys the game, but rather he can no longer stand the racist abuse that he and other black players are subjected to, both here and abroad. When it comes to tackling racism in football, the FA and UEFA have been, at best, well-meaning but ineffective, and at worst, indifferent. This is completely unacceptable. If we truly want football to come home in all its glory, then we need to defend the dignity of all our players. Otherwise, we will lose the talents and passion of players and fans from all backgrounds. Just a warning, this debate may contain language that some viewers might find offensive.
Nobody could argue with what you've just said, June, but the question is, what do we do about this? This is not a new problem. You know, I stopped going to my club, which is a London club, approximately 35 years ago, because I was in the middle of our famous stand, and I was like, there was a period when they were throwing darts, and I was like the bullseye in the middle of this stand, because one black face.
So that actually happened to you?
I never got hit by a dart, but I knew. But that's the reason I stopped going.
Yeah.
I was smart enough to. But the problem is, there are two things here which we've got to deal with. First of all, what do the players do? Should they walk or shouldn't they walk? And some think that they should. Raheem Sterling says not. I think I'm sort of temperamentally with Sterling. I think that you always have to confront racism rather than walk away from it.
Yeah.
But there's a separate and bigger issue, I think, which is, the truth is, this is about football crowds. And it is not, as I think people would like to make it, about tattooed boot boys. I mean, actually, we've got rid of most of those. Yeah. But it is also about ordinary people who turn into monsters.
Something else when they're in that environment. Yeah.
You know, I had a... Karen.
But don't you think, for me, my issue with this is, I believe, of course, we have to deal with the fans, but I think it's the ineffectiveness of the FA and UEFA. That is what has upset me the most with all of this. Because actually, the bodies that are supposed to be protecting our players are doing nothing. And I think that's what the frustration is for the Danny Roses and the Raheem Sterlings of this world, is that something happens and they see absolutely nothing done. Or a minuscule fine that you know isn't going to impact that person in any way, shape or form. I just want to quickly bring in Rose's actual statement, and then it'd be great to hear more, and then we'll get the rest of the panel in. He says, "There is so much politics and whatever in football, and I just can't wait to see the back of it, to be honest. Obviously, it is a bit sad, but when countries only get fined what I'd probably spend on a night out in London, what do you expect?" And I think that's what's hurting him. It's not so much what happened, it's the fact that there is no sort of justice afterwards.
A lack of consequence.
Yes, totally. Michelle?
Should we just hear what the FA have got to say about this as well? I think it's important. So the FA is dedicated to putting a stop to racism in football. It's time to examine UEFA's three-step process for halting matches. The protocol asks the referee to stop the match if racist behaviour is of a strong magnitude and intensity, but I don't now think that is good enough. There should be no judgment call on whether something is of a strong magnitude. Racism is racism. And I agree with him, and I think that you do need to make sure that you... because I think football often represents a lot of what's going on in society, and you yourself very recently was subject to a horrible racist attack. And, you know, I think that sometimes, especially in football, I think people drink a lot before they go to the games sometimes, and then they continue their drinking when they get to the stadium sometimes, which isn't helping the situation. So I just think there needs to be a very clear, strong message that this will not be tolerated. If you are seen to be doing this, you'll just be stripped of your seat and your ticket, end of story.
Or your club will be heavily fined, so therefore they will make sure that they enact some sort of policy to help prevent this.
Yeah,
I'm just really surprised that it's... I had been under the false belief that all of this had been dealt with after we grew up in very difficult circumstances, and it's the years of the murder of Stephen Lawrence, and I used to refer to them as the bad old days of racism in this country, and I'm just worried that it's no longer the old part of that sort of sentence, no longer.
Just the continuous
it's still going on, and it appears to me that this stuff was buried, and something has emboldened certain types of people for it to come back out to the forefront, and it usually is. In the game, you stop going to the game. I've never been to a game, and that's the reason. I was born and raised in Essex, and we knew from the beginning that that's just not what you did. You didn't go to football matches because you didn't end up with your head kicked in. And that's why, in fact, my very first ever memory of a racist attack, and this is, you mentioned this one, it's actually the one in the long line of many, but my very first ever memory of it was at the age of around 10 and a half years old, and I was in the playground, and I was attacked, punched in the stomach because I asked to join a game of football. And I never played in school ever again as a result, because as they attacked me, they said this game isn't for packies.
Wow.
And the guy hit me really hard in the stomach. It's the first time I was ever hit. So I had felt that we'd sort of seen the back of those days. And now you've got me thinking as to what is it that's bringing these attitudes back out to the fore.
Or are we calling it out better? And is that the reality?
Yeah.
It might be something to do.
What do you think?
And that's to be... Well, listen, nothing but sympathy for Danny Rose. He's been subjected, and I'm going to give you an idea. You talked about the level of fines. It's laughable when you think what money is in the game.
How much was it, by the way?
I'll tell you in just one second. We'll get to them in just one moment. It's interesting, though, because I can't wait to see the end. But he then commits, he'll do another 3 or 4 years, which, that is awful. You can't make a man go through 4 years of being jeered at this level. We'll tell you what UEFA says in just a moment. Let's get an idea of the fine. June, you've mentioned this a couple of times.
Yep.
So in the past, UEFA fined Serbia £65,000 for racism and violence by their fans towards England under-21s during a match in 2012. That's from UEFA. And then UEFA fined one particular player, he plays for Denmark, Nicholas Bentner, £80,000 for lowering his shorts to reveal underwear with the Paddy Power logo after scoring a match in 2012. So you get £65,000 for racism and violence.
For a whole team,
yeah,
a whole club.
And you get £80,000 for showing your underwear. Wow. What does UEFA say? Gianni Infantino, UEFA General Secretary. UEFA is committed to tackling discrimination in football and really encourages all fans to join our efforts and to value respect. Respect for players, respect for officials, for the referees, for the opposite side, for all fans, for fellow supporters of all nationalities, of all ethnic backgrounds, of all sexual orientations. Respect for everyone. There you go on. What we care about in football is the colour of the shirt, not the colour of the skin. Our commitment and our ambition is to stamp out racism and xenophobia out of football. And when you say, just lastly, you say we are defending the dignity. I think England is not doing a bad job. Oh, sorry, the United Kingdom. I'm sure the same in Scotland and Northern Ireland was. I think the UK is not doing a bad job. It's in these countries, if you look at some Eastern European countries, that are clearly so retrograde, and that's where the fines have to hit.
But I don't know if I totally agree with you, because if you look at the Anton Ferdinand and John Terry case, I think that was badly handled. And if I was Anton Ferdinand, and part of the reason why Rio said he didn't sort of finish out was because of that. And I think actually, if I was a footballer, seeing that again and again, after a while, you just give up.
Trevor, it just reflects... I mean, a football ground, it's just another part of society, isn't it? It's not like a special place.
We wouldn't accept this anywhere else. You couldn't get away with that in the workplace. We couldn't do that here.
Well,
people wouldn't do it in a workplace. And I think we may be... there's lots of good statements and there's lots of kind of demands and outrage and all the rest of it. But I wonder if some of the outrage is basically missing the real target here.
Yes.
Who are the fans? Because, there are football clubs where the Y word, referring to Jews, is used every single week.
Yes.
There is a well-known chant, I'd rather be a Paki than a whatever. This is what the fans do. The point I want to come to, Nick...
Trevor.
So it's this
It doesn't happen at the Oval, it doesn't happen at Twickenham, it doesn't happen at Wimbledon.
And it doesn't happen in women's football, for example. My point is, if we really want to do something about this, then actually... what you're going to have to do is to clear the stadiums. The fans are going to have to be punished.
And
rather
there's too
than
much
just
money.
Well, because what's happening here is the atmosphere when you get in there is quite... I mean, I now go back.
Yeah.
And I took my daughter many years ago to her first football match, 7 years old, in the most expensive stand in English football at the time. Halfway through, two blokes jump up in front of us, shouting at Carlton Palmer, black player, "You lanky-legged black something, four letters." and they look round at us and go, look at all these children behind them and say, oh, sorry, we didn't mean any offence. By the way, 3 weeks later, I was at a posh reception in the City of London, and I walked into the guy who did that, senior lawyer in a city firm. My point is, this is actually about the culture of the game.
But why not at Twickenham? That's what I don't understand.
No,
different
but
culture.
what he's saying is the culture of the
different
game.
Different game.
It's the culture of the game.
I do think, though, yeah, you're right to focus on the plans.
And it'll only change when the fans are themselves bad. Not all of them. Not just the odd skinhead.
Let's have a look at what Raheem Sterling said, because he takes the view that actually the player shouldn't walk off. I personally, he says, wouldn't agree with walking off. To win the game would hurt them even more. Yeah, they're only trying to get you down. If you walk off, they win. To score or win would be better. He's done a lot to challenge racism. And something else he said is he said he doesn't think he can solve it. And that speaks to the earlier point that I thought, hold on a minute, this stuff I thought had gone away and it's come back again. And all he said is, look, I don't think I can solve it. All I can do is raise awareness around it, which is what this debate's about, I suppose. Well,